Hello. It's been a while since I dropped in with one of these. They always seem to be political commentary, but it's what I like to think about. So there you go. That and sex, but I'm not going to talk about my personal sex life on here. So we're stuck with politics. And looking back at the other recordings I have left so far on my YouTube account, the one about Venezuela did not go as I expected because the U.S. didn't invade. All he did was take their president, throw him in jail, and left the country alone. Except, we probably rang their bell a little bit about oil. That's about it. A few people made a few billion dollars on that, and that one sort of petered out, I think. The deal with Iran is totally different. The U.S. invasion of Iran, the U.S. attack on Iran, it's not an invasion yet, but they're talking about doing it with ground troops. But the U.S. attack on Iran is going to change the world forever. That is not an understatement. Looking just regionally in the Mideast, Saudi Arabia has lost all stature by going all in with the United States and the Trump crew. Iran, the whole point was to destabilize, to overthrow the Iran regime, and get a government that's like the Shah of Iran was back in the day, friendly to the United States and the United States oil interests, basically. That was why they had the revolution in the first place in 1979. And if you don't know about the Iran Revolution, and the Shah of Iran and Ayatollah Khomeini, look all that shit up, man. We're still living the effects of those events from when they happened. But Saudi Arabia is going to lose its stature as the big boy on the block because the U.S. always backed them up. But now that Iran is probably going to beat the U.S. and Israel at their own game, Iran's stature is going to go apeshit crazy. And not only are they probably making gazillion dollars on these higher oil prices right now, but I also think that they had a stroke of genius by charging a tariff to every boat that passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Whoever thought that up was a fucking genius. Iran is going to make so much money, they are going to clearly dominate regional politics. They just became a major political force in the world. That's what's going to happen within the Mideast and with Iran. Things could not have gone better for them if they tried to come up with a political plan or ploy or bullshit of some type to try to coerce events to happen for them as well as they have, the way they're going to turn out. Iran is going to come out of this smelling like roses. It's going to be like The Godfather at the end. Michael, at the very end of the movie, everybody went into the office space and kissed his hands, That's what all the Arab states are going to be doing with Iran now, man. It's insane, the dynamic that's going to change because of this. If you don't know what's going on, Iran is bombing Israel, bombing the occupied territories in Gaza, in southern Lebanon, in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, all the occupied areas that Israel is trying to lay claim to. I think Iran is targeting them, and the only resolution to this, now that Israel's defenses are beat, the only resolution to this is going to be that Israel agrees to withdraw And also, they will not they will stop funding the military and behaving the way they are, and they will live within their borders, and that's what they're allowed. And if Israel doesn't agree to it, then I think Iran's just going to keep bombing them and bombing them. And Iran's being a benevolent enemy. They're not bombing civilian areas, even though I'm sure they would love to right now. But Iran has achieved the moral high ground, and they know that, and the world knows that, and Iran's not going to give it up. So Iran is going to be the nicest enemy anybody ever had right now, in terms of just bombing the Israeli government and U.S. military installations in the Mideast. So between that and between the oil windfall that they're already enjoying and they'll enjoy more, and between the new tariffs they're charging for all the ships that are passing through the Strait of Hormuz, Iran is by far the international winner. Like I said, they couldn't have planned it better. Next up, let's look at China. What probably the most interesting development, I'm sure China came up with the idea, well, China and Iran together probably came up with the idea of charging a tariff for all the boats passing through the Strait of Hormuz. I could see China doing something like that. But only boats, only oil tankers that pay in Chinese currency will be allowed through. If you're paying with dollars, you will not be allowed to go through. Dollars are obsolete. In a blink of an eye, the United States dollar has gone from the mightiest currency to obsolescence. In the blink of an eye. That is not an exaggeration. The moment that the Irani started charging the tariffs in Chinese currency, that moment was the demise of the US dollar. Countries are starting to sell all the US bonds that they have, and we're not going to be able to pay for our debt anymore. We're going to have to pay the piper and pay off our national debt if we want to regain our status as the preeminent superpower in the world. The first thing we have to do is pay off our debt. Countries are not going to, they don't want to support, when they buy bonds, they're supporting this country in the United States. They buy U.S. bonds, they're supporting the United States. But they don't want to anymore, and I don't blame them. Who blames them? So China is a huge beneficiary, because I'm sure they're brokering a lot of these deals in the background between the countries in Iran to let the product pass through the Strait of Hormuz. I know Japan has already paid the piper, so to speak. They've already genuflected. Japan has. Who else has? I think France has. But that's France's nature. They're global. They're globalists at heart. So I know France and Japan have. I've read stories about that. And I'm sure there are many other countries that are lining up to do this so that they can get their oil. And the U.S. is going to be left holding the stick. The short stick here. Russia. That would be my next thought. Russia, India, and then I'll deal with Europe and Canada and the United States last. Russia's in a funny position because they're helping Iran with satellite information and satellite imagery and all that. They're helping Iran with that. I just have read recently that recently being yesterday and today, that they are providing Iran with anti-aircraft weaponry surface-to-air missiles to help Iran with their defense. Meanwhile, they're getting their asses kicked by Ukraine. Ukraine is really turning the tide of that war with their drone technology and expertise. Ukraine's going to come out of this looking pretty good too. But yeah, so Russians getting their asses kicked by Ukraine, and the tide of that war is turning in Ukraine's favor very slowly but surely. But they have equipment that is high-tech enough to shoot down American fighters. I think I read that was that fighter that got shot down was the first time that model of fighter ever got shot down ever. And Iran did it. So I'm sort of like Russia's up and down. There's the cost benefit is sort of fighting against itself. Ukraine is coming out smelling like roses, potentially so, but that's the direction I see things going. Because Ukraine is turning the tide with its drone technology against the Russian invasion. And they offered to Israel and the United States to help with their drone defense to make it cost effective to fight against Iran's drone attacks. It's funny, I didn't hear much that the U.S. accepted that. And I'm curious to see how that got resolved. Because all the media, pretty much all the American media now is owned by Trump billionaires. So I didn't see the answer to that, and I'd have to specifically look it up to inform myself, which is bullshit. They should just follow the story through neutrally. Whether it's in favor of the U.S. or whether it's against the U.S., they should still report it. That's the purpose of the media. So Ukraine's looking pretty good. Russia, I give them a I give them a shoulder shrug. China, thumbs up. Iran, 2 thumbs up so far. Western Europe and NATO. They're going to get a lot of respect from the world because they did not allow their bases to be used for logistic support as the U.S. invaded, as the U.S. attacked Iran. Western Europe pretty much shut that down. And I think they're going to get a lot of street cred for standing up to the U.S. But I mean, people say, oh, they're not being our allies. That's a specious argument. Trump attacked Iran without consulting Europe. It's not Europe's responsibility to bail them out now. That's just what it is. He's been treating Europe like shit, and then he wants to get bailed out by Europe. What the fuck? Hell no. I understand Europe's attitude about it, and Spain, I think, was the first country to refuse air rights, for any American military that are attacking Iran. And then I can't remember who followed, but I know a few other nations followed. And it's the trend now, just to tell the U.S. no. We're not going to support your insanity anymore. We're out. We're out of the insanity game. There were, I think, 44 countries that got together to discuss how to solve the Strait of Hormuz problem without the U.S. invited. 44, that's like the UN. Basically all the major players in the world got together and were discussing how to move forward on this. And Canada, Canada's they're in the long game right now, and I have respect for Canada. I haven't seen them do much here about the Strait of Hormuz. They sort of walked the fence in terms of committing either way about it. So they lost a little bit of cred for that. But they're in for the long game. They're not going to suffer in the long term because, this is sort of a blip. It's a blip with major significance, but it's still a blip, and they're not playing the blip game. They're in the long game. And that comes to the U.S. as the last and least. I can't imagine a scenario that could have gone worse or could have been executed more poorly than this entire mess of the U.S. attacking Iran. It makes absolutely zero sense for the U.S. to have done this. You know, Iran apparently has some pretty good missile technology because they have defeated Israel air defenses, which were touted, the dome or whatever the fuck that thing was, you know, as impregnable. And here we are now. Iran is pretty much lobbing bombs on Israel wherever they want and whatever they want. Yeah, so the U.S., it was a bad idea for the U.S. to invade. Because of this invasion, number one, well, I'll just list them, I'm not going to number them. Because of this invasion, the U.S. really right now is the laughing stock of the world. Iran is trolling the United States with Lego troll videos. If you haven't seen them, get over to Instagram and maybe do a search on Iran trolling videos or whatever, trolling AI. They've done some on the president. They've done one on, I think, yeah, it was Pete Hegseth. They did one on him. I think they've done one or two more. And if they're nothing else, they're master trollers as they lose the war, right? They have that skill about them. But I don't think they're losing, honestly. The U.S. and Israel are both asking for ceasefires now, and Iran is like, nope, don't think so. Let's keep bombing each other for a little while longer. You know, that's Iran's take on it. So the U.S. dollar. So the U.S. has been embarrassed on the world stage because of this. The U.S. dollar has lost its primacy as the primary currency of the world. Everybody wants dollars. Everybody wanted dollars, but that is going to be no longer. People are cashing in their bonds, and once the U.S. bond market disappears, the U.S. economy is going to go upside down. So we need to keep the bond market, people. So, yeah, the US dollar has lost its weight as the primary currency in the world. The petrodollar is a thing of the past. It's going to be relegated to economic history stories. The U.S. military, we are getting run out of the Mideast. The military is sending home as fast as they can all civilians and any unnecessary personnel. Those people are leaving without their household goods, without their cars, without any of their possessions, and just getting the hell out and being flown the hell out of Dodge. They're coming back to the States. They don't have houses, they don't have cars, they don't have money. They're being dropped into the welfare and social services systems and charity systems for places to stay and for food to eat. So we're creating a whole band of homeless people who are coming back from the Mideast. Pretty horrible. Very poorly executed. I mean, This is directly Hegseth's fault. Because any military plan, you have the objective. Why are you doing this in the first place? And then you do what is called backward planning. From the time we take over Iran and put in our own king to run that country, what has to happen before that? What happens before that? You backward step it, backward plan it all the way to today, right now, of me signing the document to execute this plan. That clearly was not done. This is a fucking soup sandwich. This is a mess. So the U.S. military is losing its stature. NATO is getting cohesion on its own, and the U.S. military is nowhere to be heard. Their voice. Trump is threatening NATO, saying the U.S. is going to leave NATO, and NATO is saying, "Go." You know, they're not trying to kiss Trump's ass or this country's ass so that we stay in NATO. They're just ignoring us on the world stage. So we probably will end up out of NATO. So militarily we're down. Prestige as a country we're down. The primacy of the dollar is gone. I don't know what's left for this country. I mean, by invading Iran, we might have just hastened the end of this country. You know, all the other countries are going to be selling their bonds, and the U.S. won't be able to pay the interest on its debt anymore. I mean, this is AI is taking over and causing unemployment. There is just not a silver lining on any of these clouds. So, leaving with the happy thought, if you can, get a blowjob, or if you're good at it, give a blowjob. Even if you're not good at it but want to try, just go ahead and do it and have some fun. Because who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Good night.